Hey folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Y'all may remember a couple weeks or months ago, I published a video all about kissing when it comes to having oral piercings, because that's a question that I think a lot of people have, that I get asked often, and that I know many people express online as being a big question for them, but they don't feel comfortable asking their piercer. And I thought it would be the start of a nice series about education on topics that can be uncomfortable or make you, just a little nervous to ask your piercer or someone you know about. And through that, I have come to the conclusion that y'all are very horny and need to touch some grass. Because I made that video and I was overwhelmed with people commenting and telling me, Lynn, we don't care about kissing and piercings. You need to tell us about oral and piercings. We need to get explicit. You need to dive deep. So here we are today, my friends. Let's talk about it. Oral and body piercings and how that affects things. I'd like to preface this by saying this video is probably not going to be 100% comprehensive, because as long as I have been racking my brain to figure out what to cover, I keep coming up with more and more things, and I don't feel like making a 4-hour long video. So I'm just going to try and fit as much as possible as I can in this one, and if we need to make a part 2, we'll make a part 2. Now, when we're talking about oral and piercings, I feel like we can kind of break it down into two main categories: either the receiver having piercings or the giver having piercings, and how that affects what's going on. So to start, let's talk about the giver having piercings. When we're talking about the person who is performing the act, who is having piercings, we're typically talking about oral piercings. We're talking about tongue piercings, lip piercings, things that are going to come in contact with the person who is receiving. And this is a very popular reason for people to get oral piercings. If any of you have tongue piercings at home, you know that people have made comments about them. It is the mentality that I think comes along with a lot of oral piercings. And yes, having these piercings can add a really interesting or enjoyable new sensation for the person receiving, but I'm here today to burst your bubble and say that they are not like these magical, amazing things. I think the internet and a lot of community spaces have a habit of, blowing the power of certain piercings out of proportion, and kind of like fetishizing piercings to a certain extent. And I'm not going to say that they can't feel enjoyable or pleasurable. I'm just going to say that they're not as big of a difference as the internet or as people may make it out to be. It is a new sensation like any other new sensation, like any other toy, like any other act. Some people are going to really, really like it and thinks it feels amazing. Some people are going to really, really not like it and not enjoy that sensation. And the majority of folks are going to fall in somewhere in the middle. It's going to be interesting or different, but it's not necessarily going to be something that they absolutely have to have every time. So to start going into it, understand that your piercing may not be universally well received by all of your partners. Some people may like the feeling of a tongue ring. Some people may find it to be uncomfortable or painful. If you're not careful, depending on the type of jewelry you wear, you can definitely scratch or harm your partner in the process of performing these acts. For that reason, if you know that that's something that's going to be happening, wear jewelry where comfort for you and your partner is the highest priority. So as much as you might like really cute lip rings covered in prong set gemstones and little spikes for your upper lips, those might not feel very comfortable for the person who's receiving. At the end of the day, the classics are classics for a reason, and plain, simple beads and plain barbells are generally what's going to be the most comfortable and the safest to work with. Now this always leads me to what everyone brings up. Well, Lynn, what about vibrating tongue rings? Those are supposed to be like super awesome. What about those? How do you feel about those? They're really honestly like not that great. The vibrations are pretty weak, especially if you compare it to any other toys that you can use. And B, please, we should not ever be putting batteries or electronic equipment like that in our mouths. It is very high risk. You can absolutely end up accidentally hurting yourself, and even burning yourself or your partner with these. They are always, always, always poorly made. There's no high quality companies making vibrating tongue rings, because we know that it's like not a really great or safe idea. So a lot of the companies that make them are really low quality. They use like acrylic and cheap metal casings, and I've definitely seen those casings come undone during wear or even during acts, and I have in at least one instance heard of someone ending up with chemical burns, acid burns on their tongue from a vibrating tongue ring. I really just don't suggest it. Not to mention, if you understand how jewelry works together, and if you've ever used a vibrating tongue ring, you know that it screws together, it twists, and vibrations can loosen that and make it come unscrewed. And these are all externally threaded, so they're not very secure to begin with, and far more frequent than I hear about more severe instances like burns or problems. I hear about the jewelry coming unscrewed and someone accidentally swallowing a piece, or a piece getting lost in a partner. So I really, they are not lint approved. And if you'd like to see me do a whole video in depth about why vibrating tongue rings are a bad idea, I guess let me know in the comments. I don't know if it warrants a full video, but you be the judge of that. Now, in general, this is advice that I think should apply to any intimate act, but especially when we're talking about piercings like that. For the person giving, make sure you are being mindful of the sensations that the person receiving prefers. Have communication, be open-ended, ask questions. Like I mentioned earlier, not everyone is going to like how your piercings feel. Not everyone is going to find it to be an enjoyable sensation. And what works for one partner might not work for another one. So make sure you keep open lines of communication. I see far too many people who act like, oh, I have a tongue ring and that means I'm amazing at oral for everyone, kind of no matter what, and it really does not work that way. A tongue ring is not going to magically make you suddenly absolutely amazing at this, and plenty of your partners might not even like how that feels. So stay with open communication, please. Now, when it comes to the receiving partner having piercings, I feel like that's where we can kind of start getting a little bit more in depth with things. When we're talking about the receiving partner having piercings, we're talking about genital piercings, and these piercings tend to be significantly more functional. Yes, having a piece of metal on your tongue or on your lip creates a sensation that your partner can feel, but a lot of times it's not really going to do all that much for direct stimulation. But if your partner has a piercing down there, that can often do a lot for direct stimulation, if you know how to work with it. And the biggest step to working with that is to ask the person and have open lines of communication. And that goes for any intimate act. But each person with piercings is not like a uniform monolith. Everyone is not going to enjoy the same sensations, the same behaviors, and the same stimulation. Everyone is going to enjoy something different with their piercings. That's part of what makes them so unique. Receiving partner has piercings, they should be open with communicating to the giving partner about what sensations they do and don't like with their piercings, about what is safe and what isn't safe with their piercings, and also about what might be painful or uncomfortable with their piercings. An action that one person absolutely loves and they think feels amazing might be the exact same action that for another person is really painful with their piercing or really irritating. No two bodies are the same, so you definitely want to have honest and open communication about what the other person prefers with their piercings. On the flip side, I think a lot of partners who haven't been with someone with piercings can find it to be very intimidating to take off someone's clothes and find a bunch of metal down there, and a lot of folks don't necessarily know what to do or how to interact with piercings. I find that a lot of clients, their feedback is that their partners are very shy and very nervous about hurting their piercings, and so try and be like way too gentle or like just kind of leave the piercings alone. And while I will say that being more cautious with piercings is far better than being not cautious enough, you don't have to be that intimidated by them. And I think having open lines of communication really help. If someone is wearing genital piercings, I would hope that they're comfortable and familiar enough with their body to know the sensations that they do and don't like. And you can make having communication and conversation about that very sexy and enjoyable as part of it. It doesn't have to be a dry conversation. Get creative, folks. Now, that is some general good advice when it comes to piercings and oral, but let's talk about some more piercing-specific advice as it goes. One big thing I really want to talk about is damaging your teeth. If you are the giving partner and the receiving partner has piercings. This is probably the most prevalent when it comes to things like Prince Alberts, epidravias, ampulangs, and frenums, but is still something that can be a concern with VCHs, triangles, and inner and outers, depending on exactly how you're engaging in these activities. But at the end of the day, it's a relatively large piece of metal that is going into someone else's mouth, and as we all know from our many discussions about oral piercing and oral safety here, that can cause chipping and damage to people's teeth. So you do want to be mindful of that and careful of that during these behaviors. You absolutely can chip someone's tooth. I see it happen the most often with very large stretched Prince Albert piercings where the jewelry is just very, very big, and it is just clanging around back there. So please be careful, please be smart, please go slow until you feel comfortable and confident maneuvering around the piercing. Depending on the jewelry someone's wearing, it might be a better bet to wear something different when it comes to oral sex. If someone tends to wear really large captive bead rings in their piercings, those are going to be way more likely to end up damaging or hurting someone's teeth than, let's say, a more fitted curved barbell. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now, a lot of folks will go, oh, well, what if I wear plastic jewelry? Would that make it safer? Plastic jewelry is not super safe. I have a whole article on my blog about why it can break down over time in the body. In genital piercings, it is just really not a clean or safe option, so that would not be a great alternative. Really, the best thing you can do is just be mindful and cognizant with the jewelry that you are wearing, with your titanium pieces, and just use a little common sense. Don't immediately jump into doing things super rough or super vigorous with a partner who's not familiar around your piercings at all. Have a few sessions, start slow. Both of you get comfortable working with your piercings, your body, your flow together, and work your way up to making those behaviors more vigorous in a way that is careful and mindful of both your enjoyment, yes, but of also your partner's health and safety. Speaking of health and safety, let's talk about protection, because we should be using it. There is a very widespread urban legend that piercings make it harder to wear condoms or use protection, and that is an urban legend. As long as you are sizing things correctly, piercings are still completely stable when it comes to condoms, dental dams, and other forms of protection. Now, the key word there is sizing things correctly. A size that may have fit you before piercing or before stretching your piercing or with a certain piece of jewelry may not be what fits you comfortably and securely with a different piece of jewelry after stretching or with a new piercing. So the person who wears these piercings should take on the responsibility of exploring different sizes and styles of protection in order to find something that works really well with their piercing and with their body parts. You may need to experiment with different sizes, different lubrications, and different materials, but rest assured, I have yet to find a client who could not find protection that worked for them. But if you went from having just a penis to having a penis with a 0 gauge captive bead ring in it that's a huge diameter, you might need to go up a size in the protection that you wear. That just kind of makes sense. When it comes to dental dams, I will say that I find that dental dams made for this purpose are far more durable with piercings than tricks like cutting a condom and using that as a dental dam. So I would strongly suggest purchasing and investing in keeping some dental dams on hand that you know work with your body and your piercings. Another really important element of safety is hygiene. Hygiene is really important with piercings and also with intimate acts in general, but it becomes a little bit more important when we start having multiple piercings, and this goes for the giver and the receiver. Just like you would brush your teeth and freshen up before a date, you should check your oral piercings to make sure there's not food or plaque buildup. Especially if you've gone out to dinner and now you're going back to someone's house, take a second to go to the bathroom and do a quick rinse. Food and particles can become trapped in oral piercing jewelry, and we can accidentally transfer those to our partners during these acts. So you want to make sure that you're being extra thorough with cleaning your piercings before doing anything like this. And the same goes for the receiving partner. The point of this video is to get into TMI, so I'm here to tell you that unless you are really thoroughly checking, it is very possible for small bits of debris, and especially things like bits of toilet paper and little bits of fuzzies from your underwear, your boxers, to get trapped in jewelry during the day. So taking a quick second to excuse yourself to the bathroom if you know intimate acts are going to occur, and making sure to clean things down thoroughly, cleaning both the area and the piercings themselves, is always a really smart idea. And in general, if these are piercings that you have, you should spend extra time during your day cleaning the jewelry and giving the piercings a once over, just to make sure that everything is staying clean and hygienic. Now, one of the other really big questions I get asked when it comes to these piercings is how soon before I can safely do these intimate acts, how soon before I can engage in oral with my new piercings. And that's going to depend on the piercing at hand. When we're talking about oral piercings, let's say you've gotten a tongue piercing, is pretty much our most common one, and you want to know how soon it's going to be safe before you can have oral with your partner. Well, that's going to depend on a few factors, the biggest being comfort and hygiene. Comfort is our primary concern. We want to make sure that things don't hurt, burn, sting, pinch, and with a brand new piercing, especially a tongue piercing, it is going to be swollen and tender for the first couple of weeks, so you're not really going to want to engage in these activities. Not to mention, the tongue is a muscle, and this functions a little bit differently than other areas of piercing. This does mean that tearing and migrating is a risk with tongue piercings. Now, that risk is minimized by piercing at a slightly larger size, a 12 gauge, that's a little bit more stable. However, that risk still exists during the early healing phases. And one of the most common reasons I see for this happening is people performing oral sex too soon with a brand new tongue piercing. You've got to give your piercing time to heal and stabilize before you're jumping back into these activities. In an ideal world, folks would refrain for about 2 to 3 months and give their piercing time to heal fully and completely. In a realistic world, I would say that you could resume gentle acts at around the 1 to 2 month mark. But the key word there is gentle. I would not do anything vigorous. I would not do anything that's putting a bunch of pressure or a bunch of movement on your tongue piercing. And I would really listen to your body. If at any point the piercing doesn't feel normal, if it feels sore, if it feels tender, whether it's during the act or afterwards, I would stop and wait a few weeks before continuing. But I cannot strongly suggest enough that this piercing heals relatively quick. 3 to 5 months is a very fast heal time for a piercing. I promise you can make it through 3 months abstaining from this behavior. Make sure your piercing is super healed and stable, and then get back into it. Not to mention, when a tongue is freshly pierced, you need a longer bar to allow for swelling, and that bar is very cumbersome. It does not work well for oral and other intimate acts. So spare yourself and your partner the heartache, the embarrassment, and the awkwardness, and just wait for your piercing to be more healed and downsized. Now, all of that is taking into account comfort. Hygiene is another really big factor too. While we're not necessarily worried about STDs, we are worried about other people's bodily fluids and bacteria and the way that could affect a healing piercing. And infection, and yes, the spread of STDs in a fresh piercing are both actual concerns. So if you are engaging in any behaviors where you come in contact with someone else's bodily fluids for the first month, you need to be using protection. Given that you're talking about an oral piercing that you just got, please stay away from stuff with fragrances, dyes, flavoring, and silicone-based lubricant, because all of those things can be very, very irritating. In general, I would like it if folks use protection for the first 3 months while their piercing was healing, just to be on the safe side, because infection in oral piercings is no joke. But realistically, make sure you're being responsible by using protection for that first month at the bare minimum, and honestly, just don't do anything with it for that first month. It is 1 month. It will go by faster than you expect. I pinky promise. Now, genital piercings can be a little bit of a different story because these can sometimes have a longer healing time, and they can also be more fragile during the healing process. In general, the same basic guidelines apply as they do for oral piercings to genital piercings, and that is comfort and hygiene. So comfort, if anything burns, stings, pinches, feels uncomfortable or weird, don't keep doing that thing. Give it time. And then the hygiene factor. Again, we are worried about other people's bacteria and bodily fluids. And when you're talking about genital piercings, you're talking about someone else's saliva and the bacteria of their mouth getting on your brand new body piercings. That is a recipe for a bad time. So please use protection while these piercings are still healing. Now, some genital piercings can take quite a while to heal and feel comfortable with more vigorous activities. Things like apodravias and ampullings sometimes take clients months to feel truly comfortable for these acts, and when it comes to things like reverse PAs or more advanced appas or ampullings, I've seen clients take, no joke, over a year before this was comfortable. That's something that you should understand in signing up for piercings that can be more difficult or more complicated healers, and make sure that you're prepared for the reality of what that long healing time is going to look like for you. When it comes to piercings like VCHs and HCHs, these are piercings that, much like a tongue piercing, can be a little bit more prone to migration. So you definitely want to be very gentle with these until they're fully healed, and listen to your body even well after healing. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Your body is telling you that it doesn't like whatever's happening. Put a pause, pump the brakes, make sure that things are okay, and adjust to an activity that's not causing you that same discomfort. All of that being said, I absolutely know that people are not going to follow this. People are going to go home and be very excited about their new piercing. A lot of times piercings feel healed before they're actually healed. So 2 or 3 months in, your new tongue piercing or genital has lulled you into a false sense of security that it's fine. You go to have an intimate experience and it is not fine. And in these situations, please just get back in touch with your piercer. I hope all of you are seeing a piercer who you feel comfortable with and who you feel secure as a good piercer. And B, this is our job, and I promise you, we see things like this more often than you would imagine. There is genuinely no shame in it. I would rather you come back to me and say, hey, so my partner and I had a date, we were having a great night, we got a little too drunk, we went home, I know my piercing is still very fresh, but we weren't thinking about that, and now things are irritated, or now I'm having problems, can you please help me? But being given the context of what caused the irritation definitely allows us as body piercers to better advise you on how to heal the irritation. And if you are getting very vigorous and very excited with your new body piercings before they're fully healed, you are probably going to deal with some irritation. And these are oftentimes not piercings that you want to have to deal with irritation on, or the irritation can be tricky to get to go away. So please use your piercer as a resource. Come to us and allow us to help you in these situations. We are a professional. This is part of our job. Please trust that we are here to help you and advise you. And if these things do happen, we'll be able to walk you through getting them to heal. As a very big side note, if irritations do occur from intimate acts like oral, part of allowing your piercing to heal is going to be refraining from that act while it is healing. In general, if you can just be patient and wait for your piercings to be more healed and stable before attempting these acts, you won't have to deal with irritation and the back and forth of getting stuff to heal. So I know in the short term, it's very hard to abstain for a month or 2 months or however long it takes for your piercing to fully heal, but I promise you in the long run, it'll be worth it, and you'll actually be back to your regular activities faster if you're patient a little bit in the beginning. Now that we've covered all my general advice for this, I wanted to get into answering some specific questions that I know people had because y'all were commenting it all over my TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and all over my DMs. So let's get into some of your specific queries. One of the biggest questions I got asked was about my vertical philtrum piercing and similar vertical philtrum or labret piercings and how those would affect things when it came to oral, more specifically if the person receiving had a penis. And yes, when we have vertical oral piercings like a philtrum or a labret, those are going to be a little bit more directly affected by giving oral to someone with a penis than things like standard labrets or standard philtrums, which are going to be a little bit more out of the way. You'll probably have to adjust how you purse or hold your lips for these behaviors, because leaving things in their default position, a lot of times the bottom bead for your vertical philtrum or the top bead for your vertical labret ends up getting dragged, and that can cause a lot of irritation and also just does not feel very good. This is really tricky to do while these piercings are still healing, because if you have one, you know that they swell quite a bit, and that swelling takes a while to go fully away. And while your lip is still in that already been downsized but still a little swollen phase, it's really hard for you to control and contort your lip in a way that's truly comfortable and makes use of all of the flexibility of that tissue. That comes after these piercings are fully healed. In general, I would really suggest abstaining from this configuration when it comes to oral for ideally the entire healing time. But if you are unable to do that, please just be incredibly gentle. Make much more use of your hands than you normally would. Just don't fall back on the lips until they're fully healed. Now, once they're fully healed, these piercings stabilize a lot. You get much more comfortable with the flexibility and the movement of the lip around the jewelry, and you're able to adjust things and just kind of keep your lip out of the way. Now, you can sometimes allow the jewelry to contact your partner in order to give an interesting sensation, but you'll quickly notice that that friction can oftentimes be irritating for the piercing. So I would just let this one heal and then tweak your technique until you find something that's going to be comfortable for you and not cause irritation for this piercing. Another side note is that these piercings can migrate, so if you are being way too vigorous or doing this too often during the healing process, you could cause your piercing to migrate and potentially lose it. These can take 6 to 9 months to heal. I know that can be a long time to abstain, but you just have to do it once in order to get the piercing to fully heal, and then you can have all the fun with it that you would like. And then probably the question that I think is one of the most difficult for clients to deal with, but is definitely something that happens and is a question that I have been asked multiple times in my career. What happens if something comes unscrewed or gets lost? And yes, I am here to tell you that that is something that absolutely can happen. In an ideal world, we want to just prevent this from happening at all. So anyone with piercings wants to make sure that they're checking that their piercing is tight. Remember earlier in the video when I suggested taking the time to run to the bathroom and freshen up your mouth with oral piercings or freshen up down there with genital piercings? That's also a really great moment to take 2 seconds and double check that your jewelry is tight. give it a quick twist, make sure everything's on there securely. If you've got captives, just give your bead a little check, make sure it's in there tight, make sure you're checking beforehand that you're not going to lose things. Oral and any intimate acts are vigorous acts that have a lot of back and forth motion happening directly on our jewelry, which can cause things like balls and discs to unscrew or beads to pop loose. So double check before and after an act that all of your jewelry is still tight and secure. Now, we don't always remember to double check. Sometimes we're just in the moment, and sometimes accidents just happen and things come undone. The second you notice that something is wrong or a piece of jewelry is missing, please pause whatever activity you are doing. Do not just keep going and say, we'll figure it out when we are done. Do not do that, my friend. Pause, let it be known that you have lost something, that something is missing, and check first. Check the bedding or the area surrounding you really quick, see if you're able to locate it. A lot of the times it's just fallen and rolled away. Sometimes it may have rolled off under the bed or under the couch, disappeared into wherever left socks and Tupperware lids go, and you're not gonna find it back. But if you have any concern that a piece of jewelry may have been lost inside either yourself or a partner, or you feel anything that feels abnormal or you're not sure, take some deep breaths, calm yourself, get in touch with your piercer if you're able to. A lot of times these are fixes that are very easy for a piercer to assist with, and a lot of times the jewelry, especially depending on what it is, does not go very far. Hey folks, coming to you live from the editing station that is my bedroom because my laptop just ate the closing to this video. So we're filming it really quick on my phone so that way this video has an ending. But basically, if something has come loose or you are worried that it is stuck, please get in contact with your piercer so that we can see. Normally it's a pretty easy fix, especially if it's like something that got stuck in like your mouth or near the entrances of any internal cavities. It's normally very easy, and this happens often with like tampons and other toys getting stuck, to simply take 2 fingers, gently lubricated, and do a sweep and feel and find it. If you are unable to get in contact with a piercer or you're unable to easily or gently dislodge whatever came loose, please see a medical professional. That is what they are there for. They are there to help. And I assure you that a piece of body piercing jewelry being stuck in someone's any cavity is definitely not the strangest thing that medical professional has ever had to get out of a bodily cavity. So you're honestly, the bar is low. The bar is low. I hope this video is helpful for all of you who really asked me to cover this topic, and if there's anything you want to see me expand on in separate videos, or if you feel like there's even more and we need to make a second video about this, let me know. And if you want me to continue going in depth on similar subjects, let me know that too. Have a wonderful day. I hope to hang out and chat with you soon. Let's all go touch some grass.